Right, amazing. So welcome everyone. Just before we kick off, I would like to just begin with an acknowledgement of country and pay my respects to the rightful owners of the land. For me, I live and work on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to them and to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and pay respects to all of the Aboriginal lands that all of you are coming from tonight, and anyone here who identifies as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander origin. So welcome everyone to our Section 2 workshop. We're so excited to have you join us and hope that it will be a fun evening and that it will be interactive and that you'll get something out of coming along. So just in case this is your first time joining us with Halad to Health Tonight, we are a not-for-profit that run affordable GAMSAT tuition across Australia and also across the world. And we are quite new, and actually we're not a GAMSAT company. We predominantly are a charity that runs health education missions in the Philippines to make social impact for people who don't have access to health care and health literacy in the way that we do here in Australia. So all of our GAMSAT tuition goes toward our social impact and the things that we hope to achieve over in the Philippines. And so far we've had been off to a terrific start. We've taught over 2,500 students across lots of different platforms, lots of different resources, free events, GAMSAT courses, and have been able to raise over $20,000 that has been able to go straight into our social impact cause in the Philippines. So it's been quite a new journey for us at Halad. We're very excited to have so many of you guys on board already and come along to things like this free event, come along and study for the GAMSAT with us. And it's nice for us to be able to show that the impact has actually gone to something bigger than not only you guys getting into med or dent or whatever you want to do with your goals and getting in through the GAMSAT, but also just in general, making bigger impact across the world. So thanks so much for coming along tonight. Honestly, we just want to see you succeed and do the best that you can in the GAMSAT. And so this is the team that will be helping you tonight. You can ask us any questions. It will be really chill. I'll let you know in a minute how it will all run. My name is Sarah. I'm the head of GAMSAT at Halad. And with me, I have Dawood, Subashi, Grace, James, and Rachel. And all of them know a ton about Section 2, and they're here to help you out this evening. So before we begin, I just wanted to gauge a little bit. I'm going to launch a poll. And my first question is whether you've been to a Halad event before. And my second question is whether you've sat the GAMSAT before. Amazing. Okay. So very much a 50-50 split in both questions. So for those of you who are new, welcome. And for those of you who've come to a Halad event before, great to see you again. I'm glad to know that it wasn't so terrible last time that you came along again. And thank you for turning up tonight. And also for those who haven't sat the GAMSAT before, we'll make sure tonight that in case you're not as aware of what's going on or no idea what's happening with this Section 2 thing, that we walk you through things. And for those who've sat it before, hopefully it will be a good refresher. So just overall, our GAMSAT philosophy is really not so much about you doing well on the GAMSAT, but we want you to actually leave feeling ready to go into medical school and to become a fantastic doctor and or healthcare professional if dentistry is what you want to do or something else entirely through this process. We really just want to see you succeed in a bigger picture way. We don't just want you to do well on the GAMSAT for the sake of doing well on a test. And so you're welcome also to ask us any questions about anything that can help you along your journey to achieving whatever your goals are. So tonight, that comes to what we're going to be doing in this workshop. We're going to really break down Section 2 and basically give you a chance to practice and to get a bit of an idea of how to start if you're stuck with getting started. So I'm going to spend the first 10-ish minutes just like making sure everyone knows what Section 2 is and getting everyone on the same page and also making sure that you know what's expected of you. The rest of the time will actually be more of an interactive workshop, and each of the tutors have prepared part of approaching a section 2 prompt, and then you're going to practice with that and actually end up writing something by the end of the evening. Feel free to ask questions as you go. We will, just as a heads up, we will be spending some time in breakout rooms, so feel free to put your cameras on, to ask questions, and to give things a try and actually try the activities so that you can get live feedback from the tutors. Definitely the advantage of coming along tonight as opposed to watching the recording. So I'm going to start with what section 2 is. Also, as we go, if you have any questions, you're also welcome to shout out or put them in the chat and we'll answer them for you as we go. So in terms of section 2, what even is it? I believe in about 10 minutes, Dawood will go over the actual writing and dealing with the prompt. So I'm just going to go over what's expected of you. So you are expected to write in response to a prompt, and it's very vague what ASA expects. And so they've given 2 criteria, and I've put some dot points here of what the criteria actually mean so that you can keep those in mind as you have a go writing tonight. So the first criterion is the quality of thinking about the topic. And basically that boils down to all of the content and all of the thinking that you pour into the things that you write. And when I'm marking and when the markers are looking at what you've written, they're looking at these sorts of things. And tonight, Rachel and James particularly are going to focus on contentions and how to have a clear contention and then come up with relevant ideas. But that's a really big thing that we look for is, do you have a quality contention, and did you really think about the topic in a way that made sense and that came across really clearly? As well as that, have you come up with something that's interesting? Have you come up with something that's thought-provoking? Maybe it's unique. Have you come up with something where we can see your passion and your drive behind what you're writing about? And even if it's generic, which, let's be real, you're not always going to reinvent a brand new idea, do you then add complexity? Do you add layers? Do you make sure that there's depth to the things that you've given? So that's sort of that first dot point. The second dot point, use of language demonstrated in developing understanding, is really vague because it can mislead you to thinking that you need to use fancy language or sophisticated writing or really great grammar or whatnot. But it more means, did you provide something that was really easy for the reader to follow? Was it logical? Did it have a clear structure? Do your ideas make sense the way that you've put them out and the way that they flow? Is your language easy to understand? Is it in a good tone? And when Grace goes over her section, she's going to talk about structure and how you can put your ideas that you come up with in the first activity into a really nice, coherent structure. So that's what's expected of you. And it's still quite vague. There's nothing here that says 1, 2, 3, you need to write exactly like this. And that's what can make section 2 really tricky, is you feel like sometimes it becomes this option paralysis in that there are so many different ways you're allowed to write. And really it comes down to, we want to hear what you have to say about the topic. So in terms of that, just some do's and don'ts. In terms of, or yays and nays, in terms of the do's, definitely show who you are, show what your ideas are, show that you're able to prove yourself through your writing and through your ideas that you deserve to be a healthcare professional, that you deserve to be a doctor, that you would be good at it, that you think that way that is appropriate. Show that through your writing and just show it clearly, show it simply. That's it. That's what's required of you. In terms of the not so greats, rewriting anything that maybe you wrote in the past for the sake of writing or for the sake of sounding good or sounding smart. I would rather you write what you think right here, right now, than rewrite something that you wrote in the past or writing about some niche topic that you had to study before thinking that it sounds really smart. Be careful when writing about something controversial. Tonight, if you come up with ideas that you're not sure if they're controversial or if they're too wacky or whatnot, just ask one of us. Use the opportunity to have us answer your questions, to let us know that you're not sure about something, and we'll help you out. And just have fun with it. I think the rest of these are really like, don't worry so much about things like grammar, things like spelling, things like whether you like the topic or not. You will guaranteed have something to write about to any of the topics that you're given. And hopefully this is a really good starting point to show you that actually it's more in your control what you are able to write about than worrying over whether you won't sound good enough or won't be able to write what you need to. So those are sort of what we look for and the logistics behind getting started. And hopefully that opens up the avenues for you to know that regardless of the topic, you will be able to write something. I'm going to hand over now to Sebastian and Dawood. I'm just going to preempt an apology from Dawood. He's actually on the road due to call of emergency. And so we'll see how he goes with internet connection. If it drops out and goes a bit haywire, we'll pivot and provide the content probably through me. But we'll see how we go. So I'll hand over to Dawood and Subhashi, and they're going to go over how to actually tackle the prompt.
Okay, hi guys, I'm Subhashi. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, perfect. Could you go to the next slide, Sarah? All right. So let's start with what section 2 is. So some of you guys may have heard that section 2 requires you to write. And my first thought when I heard this was, oh no, no more multiple choice, which bummed me out initially. But honestly, section 2 was my favorite section out of the 3. I hope you guys enjoy it as well. So yes, section 2 requires you to write, but about what? So like Sarah said, anything that is related to the topic that is provided to you and something that says something about your thoughts and opinions on that topic. So before we delve into how to interpret quotes and the prompt, let's start with some logistics. So in terms of the exam setup, so the total exam time is 65 minutes with 5 minutes reading time and 60 minutes writing time. So you have to write 2 essays in this time, task A and task B. And the topics or theme you should write on is presented to you through quotes, and it's up to you to interpret these quotes and figure out what the topic is. And it's also up to you to decide how you want to use the quote. So you can use as much of the quotes or as little of the quotes as you would like. So for example, you can use 1 quote or 2 quotes or none of them at all in your essay. And so usually you get 5 quotes, and then you pick what the theme is based on those 5 quotes. And in your essay, you can agree or disagree with the quotes or the theme. As long as you stick to that theme, you'll be fine. So now let's show you an example and I'll tell you what I mean. Okay, so this is an example of what you might get on the day. So now I know this might be the first time some of you guys are seeing a prompt, so don't get too nervous or overwhelmed. I was like that too, but we'll take it step by step, okay? So the first thing you do when you get the quotes is to read through them entirely and try to understand them. So now let's have a bit of a read. So I'll read the first quote out. So the first one says, all punishment is mischief, all punishment in itself is evil. So once you read that, you should think about what that quote means to you. Try to understand it. So for me, at least, what this quote says to me is that punishment is misbehavior and that all punishment is wrong or evil. And then it's up to you to decide whether you fully agree with this quote, whether you fully disagree, or you partially agree or disagree. And just remember, you won't be judged on your opinion. Any opinion is valid. Okay, so you can agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. So if I were to tell you a little bit about my thought process, I personally don't agree with this quote fully. I do not think that all punishment is evil, which to me suggests bad intentions. So sometimes punishment is done with the intention of deterring bad behavior in the future and solidifying good virtues. For example, when I was younger, my punishment for not finishing homework is that I wouldn't be allowed to watch TV that day. And my parents had good intentions for doing so. On the other hand, I think punishing someone out of revenge or spite without good intentions is wrong. So I think I agree with this in some aspects, but not fully. Yeah, and as you read through the quotes, try to see if any of the ideas are related and see if there's a common topic. So I'll read through the rest of the quotes as well. So if you're going to do something wrong, do it big because the punishment is the same either way. The next one, a child punished by selfish parents does not feel anger. It goes to its private corner to weep. If he has a conscience, he will suffer for his mistake. That will be his punishment as well as the prison. And the last one, there is no glory in punishing. So after reading through these quotes, some of you guys may have figured out that the common theme here was punishment. But don't worry if you didn't get it this time. I'll pass on to Dawood, who will take you through how to figure out the theme.
Thanks guys. Hey guys, my name's Dawood. I'd just like to apologize if my internet does cut out. I am currently at 2 boys as I drive through rural New South Wales. But fingers crossed everything goes through. So if you guys haven't managed to find out what the actual overarching theme of the 5 quotes were "Don't worry." I'm going to be showing you guys how to go through that. So in essence, Acer loves to provide you with 5 ambivalent quotes, and it's up to you to draw the common links amongst all 5 of these quotes. I don't know if you guys have immersed yourself in those online resources, like the Section 2 quote generator that you guys may know, that provides you information on what the actual topic is. In the actual GAMSAT exam, that isn't provided to you. There's no indication of what the overarching theme is, and so it's very much up to you to understand what the overarching theme is. And so nailing how to interpret the 5 quotes is vastly important. Luckily enough, it's actually not that hard, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it. And most likely after that one indication, you guys are going to figure out how to do it for all of the 5 quotes that you come about. So within this set of 5 quotes that you do have, it's very
Okay, that sounds like that's it for Dawood's internet. Can anyone else hear Dawood? No? Okay, no worries. Okay, just in case Noah, and in case it was as hard to hear him as it was for me to hear him, for all of you, Dawood was basically saying that unfortunately ACE will just give you these quotes and hope that you can make something out of them and understand the overarching theme. So sometimes it's really simple. You might have noticed that there was a common word between all of Subhashi's ones, that the word punishment was throughout them. So you can easily go, yep, it's punishment. Unfortunately, sometimes they'll give you a bit of a curly one and you'll have to really deduce what the theme is. So I always tell my students, you need to dissect the prompt and you need to spend at least a minute when you first get the prompt making sure that you get the correct theme, because I'd rather you write an average essay on the correct theme than write a brilliant essay on the wrong theme. We can't honor something that's written on the wrong theme. So if you get the quotes and straight away you just instinctively know what the theme is, great, move on, you got the theme. But what about when you don't? Then use a few steps to help you get there. So the first step that I recommend is read all of the quotes and put each one into your own words. You don't have to do anything crazy with it. Sometimes I just put it into like a little catchphrase or a little like one global word that sums it all up. So for the first one, I would probably go, wearing the correct dress for any occasion is a matter of good manners. I would probably just reword that as it's good manners to follow customs, or like doing customary things is a sign of good manners. So the reason why that helped me to put it into like my own words made sure that I didn't focus on the wrong part of the quote. So I didn't focus on wearing a dress over the part that's actually important, which is having good manners. So what I'd love for you all to do is if you could just put in the chat what you think the overall theme is for these sets of 5 quotes, for this set of 5 quotes. Perfect. Love it. Yes. And I love how Oscar has put manners/social conventions, because absolutely there's this element to manners that all of these or most of these quotes have delved into, which is social conventions. And so if Oscar, if you wanted to then write an essay about social conventions, you would just have to make sure that you explained in your introduction that you wanted to speak about social conventions in the context of manners or good manners. And then like you could take it sort of to your own place and discuss social conventions. And it's really interesting because both Isabel and Kristen have put good manners in the chat, and here it doesn't really talk much about bad manners, but you could even like have a discussion about both sides of that. And you could say, you know, like the quotes And you don't have to reference the quotes. You don't have to put anything formal like the quotes mentioned this, so I will talk about that. But you also can if that's your writing style. And you could put something like the quotes alluded to good manners. However, like who's to say what's good and what's bad? And you could have a discussion around that. So hopefully you can see that this word here, prompt, it's just a prompt, but you do need to get the theme correct. So the theme, exactly as you've put down, it's manners / good manners / social conventions. And then with that, you can take it wherever you would like to. You just do need to make sure that you've nailed the theme. For example, reading these quotes, if you rushed, you might read them and read this word here, this phrase here, evil communication, and go, oh my goodness, I love writing about communication, and write this amazing essay on communication, and you've missed it. Or maybe here, being educated, and you see the word degree and you're like, oh, it's about education and degrees and morals, and I'm going to write about that, and you've actually missed the overall thing. So just spend a couple minutes, maybe not even like a minute max, looking at each quote and just make sure that you haven't like skipped it and grabbed out the wrong part. It's amazing surprising how often people rush and miss the theme by accident. So what we're going to do is the two prompts that we've just looked at, prompt number 1 that Subashi showed you on punishment, prompt number 2 on this one on manners. These are the two prompts we're going to use tonight for the other activities. So keep them in mind and we will come back to them. But before we move on, I just wanted to check in if anyone had any questions. Cool. Okay. I'm going to pass on to Rachel and James now, and they're going to go over planning and idea generation and use these prompts as examples to get you started.
Sarah, just before you go, I think I just want to clarify something I said earlier. So when I said, I think Sarah explained this quite well. So make sure that when you're deciding on the theme, you use all 5 quotes to figure out the theme. But when I said you can use, 1 quote or 2 quotes or whatever in your essay, I just mean like when you're writing your essay, you can focus on 1 quote or 2 or none of them and just the theme. But just remember, when you're figuring out the theme, you use all 5 of them, not just like 1 of them, like Sarah said. Yeah, thank you.
Love that. Thanks, Subashi. Amazing. All right, go for it.
Okay, well, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. And we are, as in James and I, about to go over what is arguably the most exciting part, which is coming up with your contention. So next slide, we're about to talk about, what a contention is. So if you're anything like me, I genuinely had never heard the term contention before, before I started prepping for GAMSAT. So it was completely foreign to me, but you're about to see. So the next prompt up is that your contention is just what you're trying to say. It's just the point of you writing the essay. And like, I totally understand that the point of you writing the essay is to try and get into med school, but point being, what are you trying to convey in this essay? And that's honestly pretty cool. Like, as you've seen, the prompts are kind of vague, quite flexible. So yeah, it's largely just your opinion on the topic that's being provided for you. So one way of thinking about it is that it's your ultimately statement. So this was taught to me in high school English. It's basically the last statement in your introduction. So when you go through, I don't know, like roses are red, violets are blue, and then ultimately, I think that all flowers are beautiful. It's like the big point that you really want to get across. It's your ultimately statement.
Right. And I guess the next part is, why do we need a contention? So as you'd imagine, someone who's marking these essays is going to be marking a ton of these essays at once. And really your contention is just to make it, number 1, make it easier to marker to understand what you're actually talking about. What is the purpose of your essay that you've just written? So to make it really obvious, make it really clear, and make it something that they'll remember. And then if they can remember you, it's just gonna feed into a better mark. And also, you only get 5 minutes really to structure it. So you need direction and structure. So if you're writing your essay, get halfway through, and you think, where am I going? Just go back to your contention. Okay, that is my point. I'm gonna start talking about that again. And so it's just to help yourself have an idea of where you're actually trying to head in this essay. And also it gives you a chance to say what you want about a topic. So be passionate about something, write about something you're passionate about. And next to the hot tips. And coming up to this contention, you only get 5 minutes, so keep it simple, stupid, or stupid simple, because you're not going to try. You don't have time to reinvent the wheel. You don't have time to write a manifesto. You only have 5 minutes to really plan something that you're going to be writing for an hour. So talk about something you're passionate about that makes it easier, and you don't need to memorize a bunch of quotes or facts and figures or anything like that. You don't need to reference things. Just write about stuff that you know, but don't be bogged down in memorizing a bunch of pedantic facts that you think might feed into some topic, because it might just end up you just shoehorning them into something that's not really relevant. Yeah. Now, I think Rachel's going to come up with her arguments.
Let's give it a crack. So James and I sat down and looked at the prompts that you guys have been given, and we had a crack in 5 minutes of coming up with our contentions. So I did topic 1, or topic A, punishment. So my initial thoughts, first one is ill. I come from a science background, and I quite pride myself on the fact that I don't have to kind of grapple with a lot of these like really big kind of airy fairy social order stuff. At least I didn't when I was doing GAMSAT. Now in medicine kind of have to be doing some of that stuff. So yeah, I just internally groan. But once I'm over that, I'm getting a couple vibes. I'm not sure if you guys did, but I'm getting a couple vibes. And the first one is that we are starting to talk about how punishment is evil and that there's no glory in punishment. So a bit of an undertone like it's bad. And the second one is looking at some specific examples that they provided with the child weeping. I'm starting to think that maybe they're trying to imply that there's alternatives. It's not necessary. Now, you don't have to use this stuff that they provide in the quotes. Like you said, as long as you're writing to the theme, you're good with anything that you do. But I've found when I'm trying to think of what to write, it is good to have a look at the quotes and use them as inspiration. And then the next thing I do is I then reflect upon my own thoughts and my own experiences as to what I think about punishment. And actually the first thing that came to my head, this is what I was discussing with James last night, was I'm thinking back to high school and how you used to get a detention if your skirt was above your knees. And I'm kind of thinking, it's a bit futile, but I kind of get the point. So the first thing that I said was that, look, it is effective. It totally made me wear my skirt longer than my knees and prevented me from rolling it up in the future. But also, are there better ways of doing this stuff? So I'm thinking about smacking a child and drawing on personal experiences. My parents were really staunch against us hitting each other and being hit by them. And then, as I started to go along that thoughts, I was thinking about incarceration and how, it's how effective it really is at actually punishing people. And then thinking like, I think that there's better ways to be doing it than just locking people up in jails, particularly from different socioeconomic backgrounds. So anyway, these are all the thoughts that are starting to come to my head. But then ultimately, I thought that that we should be using a model that I think emphasizes the good behavior rather than having something that's going to drive good behavior through fear of repatriation. And that would probably be my ultimately statement would be my contention, that I understand why we would punish people, but I also think that there's alternatives. And I think maybe we should be moving more towards those alternatives. So you can see here that I've got a contention I've come up with, but I've also come up with a couple of ideas as to what I would discuss in the essay as well. And that's simply just by thinking about what I think about this topic and writing it down.
Yeah, so just like Rachel, I took the other topic. So I took the topic of manners, and discussing this with Rachel, kind of my initial perception for this topic, the most interesting component for me was the exploration of pretty much what impacts someone's perception of manners. So the really quote that really resonated with me was, respect for ourselves guides our morals, respect for others guides our manners. And I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at manners as more the outward reflection of our morals from almost societal perspective. So what guides these perceptions of manners is kind of how I was trying to structure my thoughts. And so I kind of broke it down to 3 things that I would talk about. So our individual values and how they shaped our perspective of manners from an individual standpoint, then our familial upbringing and how we're raised from an individual perspective, and then finally our cultural upbringing and how we learn to cut ourselves from a societal perspective. So it's more the layers of manners, because all the 5 quotes tackled manners in very different ways. And so that's what brought me to my ultimate conclusion, that you could really argue that, I kind of skipped ahead, that manners are ultimately contrived. And it's what almost Sarah was saying before, that, who's to say what is good manners and what is bad manners. So that's what I got out of my perspective of this topic. Because then also, if you want to, you can bring it from a medical perspective, just thinking about this medically. Many different patients will have many different cultural backgrounds and different perspectives of different cultural norms. And so it is, what is to say what is the right manner in a certain situation. So just bringing it back to that. And now it's your turn.
Amazing. So hopefully what Rachel and James have both done, I love so much, because, sorry, I'm just going to skip back for a second. Your job, once you work out the theme from the prompt, is to do this thinking exercise to make your own, or come up with your own contention. So this point that both of them got to, from initial perception to therefore this is what I think, is exactly what you need to be doing. So I would love for you all to pick either one of the, or start with your preferred prompt. If you have time to do both, fantastic. Come up with your own contention. So go through the same process that Rachel and James just did. What I'm going to do is send you all to some breakout rooms, and you'll have at least one of the tutors in each of your rooms. And I want you to just, in your own time, take your time. You have like 10 minutes to come up with your own contentions. And then when you're ready, when everyone's ready in your breakout rooms, share them with each other, and you can get some feedback from the tutors as well. And you can ask them any questions that you have. So I'm going to open those breakout rooms now, and then spend your time coming up with your contentions.
Any sort of big picture ideas they gather from these quotes about punishment?
I think, me personally, I agreed with the previous ideas of it has its role, but to some degree there are better ways to handle these things, particularly with like children and stuff like that. I think like the emphasis there on selfish parents is interesting. It's complicated. These things are.
Yeah, they are. But yeah, so how would you explore that? So it's so the role of punishment is still a role of punishment, but it's not black or white, as you're saying before.
Yeah, I think just kind of briefly thinking about it, maybe I would approach it along the lines of there is so much more to it than bad behaviors versus good behaviors and one punishment to fit all. It's a case by case, individual by individual, and yeah, that sort of approach maybe.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I guess you can almost that would be in contrast to the first quote, even all punishment is mischief, all punishment is of evil. And so if you want, you can bring that as a counter to that quote. But you don't have to include the quotes. It's just as a possible guide. Kristen, you about to say something, I think?
Yeah, I think this is a very difficult topic to sort of think about, because I think punishment in a way can be bad, especially like Isabel said, for younger kids. I think sometimes it might be good to focus on the opposite, actually rewarding good behavior, because sometimes punishment, although it's meant to stop bad behavior, sometimes it can do the opposite. I don't know if they're my thoughts.
No, yeah, definitely. Can you think of a real world example where that might be the case?
I guess what someone in the other room had mentioned about school dress code. They were giving detention for, I guess, having hair down or something like that. It sort of does the opposite.
Incites rebellion.
Yeah, definitely does.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I really like these kinds of topics are really good to practice with, because exactly like you said, Kristen, like it can be hard when you look at the topic and then it's like, actually, I think of it this way. You're definitely allowed to narrow what you'd like to talk about in your piece. And you could even present it as the topic of punishment being like really interesting to look at punishment and children and the way that children respond to punishment. And then you could like spend a paragraph talking about exactly what you just mentioned about like a lot of negative instances of punishment with children and like sort of suppressing children and how they respond to that. And then you could spend another paragraph talking about the contrast and go, well, instead, if we rewarded good behavior in children, that's what this looks like. And then that can be your whole essay. So like, I think that's a really good example of how you can decide the scope of your piece. And if you want to narrow it down to being about punishment in a particular context, you actually are allowed to do that. So definitely, if you feel confused or feel like the topic isn't really lending itself overall to things you like to talk about, you can control it a little bit to be about something you enjoy discussing.
Does anyone want to give a crack at creating their contention, or maybe write in the chat? And kind of as you saw before, everyone has different perspectives, everyone has different ideas. So it's they can be there. The whole, there's no wrong answers. It's, you can argue from any perspective.
Mm. I'm gonna leave you guys to it. Go check on one of the other rooms. But definitely when you're ready, let James know what your contentions are.
B.
Yeah. And tell me like how you disagree or why you disagree.
So my first reaction was that I didn't really know who all of the speakers were, but automatically I'm assuming these are educated, highly privileged people from each of their respective sort of contexts. So to me, that clearly indicates that this idea of good manners, they're dictated by those at the top of society, and they're actually, it's kind of a very restrictive social process, social mechanism to kind of other those at the bottom, and more often than not that would ingrain racial divisions, class divisions, education, all kinds of social issues are really enforced by these, so like this idea of good manners, which is dictated by those at the top, and that like a marker of a truly egalitarian society would be one where this idea of restrictive good manners has kind of dissolved. We don't have that anymore.
Yeah, that's a really good contention to have, and I can see where you draw examples in for that too, for sure. Does anyone else have like had a different angle or had something to add to what Charlotte was saying?
I think I would probably go along a similar line to what I think James was saying about how, and even Sarah, I think she mentioned it, where she was like, oh, who's to say what's good and bad? Because I think there's definitely room to be like, well, who gets to decide and define what manners even are? Because again, there's like cultural context to consider, and just like everyone comes from different backgrounds. So whatever they've been,
making sure as you talk about communication, as you talk about manners and behaviors, is you do need to be making that link back to manners. So talk about how it's influencing people, but in regards to their manners. The last thing you want, and it's really frustrating as a marker as well, and I imagine it's just as frustrating for the person writing it, is when you get down to the bottom and you're like, oh, this is really well thought out, but it's like not super closely tied in. No, I'm not saying that you're you're not tying it in. I'm just saying you just need to consciously be aware that you're tying it in. But I think the point you make is an awesome one. Like, and maybe I'm just getting old now, but I was watching a rerun of like Sam and Cat, like the old Nickelodeon show. I'm not sure if you guys have watched that. And sometimes their behavior was absolutely appalling. Like some of the stuff they're doing or they're saying to other people, and they've got the laugh track in the background. You're like, yeah, but that was like kind of insulting and mean. And like, these are kids that are watching this stuff. I think it's a really good point.
Yeah.
So would I be able to link like maybe the influence of what they see with how
family might have done to incentivize good manners that was not reflected in the same other groups? I don't know. For me, my family was very much you can only eat at the table sort of thing. Like you have to have meals together, but in other families, that wasn't. Some people would just bring their food to the room and stuff like that. So it can be even little things like that. So,
yeah, I think with respect to manners, it's very much a cultural thing. Like different cultures have their own understanding of what good manners are. Like you said, sitting at the table and having a family dinner is good manners, but for some people it's not. Or even I know in some Asian cultures, like the oldest person at the table has to have the first bite. Yeah, so I guess it's good manners are subjective, if I could summarize that.
Yeah, definitely. And you don't even have to say good manners are just subjective. You can also talk about bad manners as well, also being subjective. I guess one example I can think of when it comes to another food example is how one of my old housemates is Japanese, and the idea that vocalizing while eating was considered really good manners to show that you're enjoying the food, while in Australia that was almost viewed in the complete opposite way, where that was a very poor show of manners. So it's even all opposite extremes. This is trying to show something that you're really enjoying, and then in the opposite, in Australia, it's complete opposite, where it's almost seen as rude. Man, subjective is bad. Yeah, definitely. I agree, Sarah.
Does everyone have a contention that they came up with? Did everyone come up with one?
Yeah, we got a few, I think.
Yeah.
So Kristen got her manners subjective. Isabella's got the punishment is not the only means of behavior control. And do you have any sort of big contention that you want for manners or punishment?
I haven't come up with one yet.
All right.
You were saying before about punishment, how you said how punishment is, there's a role for punishment, but it's not the only means of incentivizing behavior.
Yeah, maybe something like punishment, even though it helps in deterring like future bad behaviors. If done in a wrong way, might do more harm than good.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Oh, that's great. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. Because like obviously you always want to write a contention that then has like room for you to explain it and come up with ideas. A contention like that then like makes me as the reader go like, oh, like why do you think that? I want to know why, and we're going to discuss that in a second when we all come back together. But yeah, that's a fantastic one. Great. Cool. Does anyone have any questions before we head back? I think. Cool.
I finally found like a rest stop with full connectivity, so I am set.
We're going to say lovely shot of Dawood in the car there. All right, so I think we're just waiting for one more.
Dog that was in what is section 1? It's all Halad. Like
I was going to say, was that Dawood's actual dog in that slide? Lol. Amazing. Okay, we'll just, while we wait.
Hey guys, who is in the breakout room with me and Grace? I just wanted to say that as you guys go through section,
I don't think they're back yet. Or are they back?
I think they're back. Yeah, I can
Okay,
see
they're
them.
back now. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, as you go through like practicing, you'll come across a lot of people sort of differentiating between task A and task B, saying task B is very emotional and then task A is very like analytical or whatever. But keep in mind that when it comes to ASA, they don't actually care what angle you spin it. It very much depends. It's very much how people choose to sort of think about task A and task B. And so you can use the same approach for both tasks. It doesn't have to be like an emotive personal piece. Or it can be for both of them. It very much depends on like how you choose to respond to the tasks themselves. So like don't fear if someone tells you that no, task B has to be emotional or task A has to be analytical. You can literally spin it however you want. It's your essay. Like you choose what you want to go ahead with.
Absolutely. Thank you. Amazing. So I would love for all of you in the chat, if you're not comfortable to tell the world, you can send it to me privately in the chat. If you could let me know the contention or contentions, if you did both topics, that you came up with in the groups just now. Amazing. I'm just going to read some of them out for people watching the recording. So punishment is not the only option for behavior control, nor should it be the first. Punishment is a greater reflection on the punisher than the person being punished. And then some manners one, cultural manners, niche views for how manners are viewed differently in order to fit into a group environment. Yeah. And manners are subjective. Love it. Yes. Amazing. I love all of these contentions. Our perceptions, behaviors, and manners are shaped by a combination of personal, social, and technological influences. Fantastic. So, as you can see, none of these contentions were directly what was in the quotes, and all of them offer opportunity for the person who came up with it to then discuss something bigger. And we have another one. Bad manners are necessary to dissolving social hierarchy. Oh, I love that. That's going to get spicy. So what I want you all to think about before I pass on to Grace to talk about structure is when you come up with your contention is very much the moment when you've grabbed the prompt and you've gone, what do I think about the prompt? So all of you have gone, what do I think about manners? And you've come up with things like manners are subjective, bad manners, we need to dissolve the social hierarchy, all these different great ideas that you have about manners, or if you did the punishment one, about punishment. However, that's your what, so that's your contention. The next step is to go, why do I think that? So you've got your contention, and basically me as the marker, I'm reading it and I read your contention, and suddenly my interest is piqued and I go, why does Charlotte think that bad manners are necessary to dissolving a social hierarchy? Like, why am I being presented with this idea? And I'm assuming that Charlotte's going to tell me that in the rest of the piece or in the rest of the essay. So your next step is to go, why do I think this? Why have I come up with this contention in the first place? And that's very much what Rachel and James did when James sort of put the 3 key reasons why he thinks what he thinks are contributed to manners. He sort of thought, okay, there's like this, there's cultural, there's the person's values, and there's family things. So you're also going to come up with your own whys for your contentions. When you've come up with a few ideas as to why you think that contention, it can be a little bit confusing about how to structure it, where to put what idea, where to put the different things that you've come up with, or even like what elements of those ideas that you should focus on. So I'm going to pass over to Grace, and she's going to go over a few different sort of structural tips and things like that. And then afterwards, keep your contentions in mind as she goes through them, because then you're going to have a chance to come up with some ideas around your contentions and also have a go at writing. So thanks, Grace. And I will... Oh, I think I went back to the prompts for a bit. You get a little recap on everything they went over. Okay. There you go.
Perfect. So I'm going to mainly be talking about structure and kind of like getting an idea of where now you're going to dive in after you've looked at some prompts and developed your contentions. So if we can go next slide. So before getting into more of a structure-oriented talk, I want you to first reflect on how you developed your contention, and what examples might you use to support your contention or explore it, and what you in particular struggled with. And so you might find that a plan before you start writing is the go-to for you. So some of the things that you can start that will, you know, ultimately influence how your essay is structured and how well it's structured is were you struggling with generating ideas? So when you do your little plan before you write, is idea generation sometimes something that you need to focus on? Or maybe you came up with all these little different bits of thoughts and you didn't know how to link them all together. So maybe in your plan you draw a mind map and you draw some links between the different sections of the mind map so that you can then fit things in a logical order when you go to write it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Or did you find that you came up with this really great example, but it was quite narrow, and you wanted to go a bit broader and make sure that you've got that kind of big brain stuff into your essay? And so maybe if that's the case, you ask yourself 5 questions when you're planning, and that could be why, and why, and why. You know, asking yourself, why do I think that? Why do I think that? And trying to generate a breadth through that. Or you could come up with your arguments, you've got some examples, but you're just not knowing where to link them. So in your plan, you're going to match your points to your evidence and kind of write that at the start. So just keep that in mind. I know we're not doing too much in planning, but I just wanted to go over that before we get into essay structure, which is next. Okay, so first, sentence structure. Generally, the best thing to do is to keep your sentences short and sweet. You are going to sound like you know your stuff more if you kind of really focus in on making one sentence really, really strong and not rambling on for too long, and your marker will get lost. So keep to your points, and the best way to do that would probably be to keep your sentences short. So in saying that, you want to punch each sentence down. So when I was first starting writing, that's what I would imagine each sentence was like punching down on the paper. You want to make a point and you want to drive it home, and you want to lead your marker there. You want to tell them where you're going. You want to tell them your contention. So punch each sentence down. In saying that, just be wary of the however, therefore, and this. So conjunctive adverbs are all those types of words. Consequently, and then nevertheless, blah, 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 blah. So that'll make also your sentences really long and hard to follow. So you can have a couple in amongst that, but I would avoid using too many of those follow-on words. All right, so that's sentences. We're going to move on to paragraph structure, and this is where it kind of gets a bit more, the world is your oyster. So common ones, though, that a lot of people turn to, you're going to probably hear this a lot, is your tear, your teal, or your teal. So that's going to be topic sentence. So something that is a sub point of your contention, linking back. Your evidence, so what supports your contention, an analysis of how that supports your contention, and then again, referring back or linking back to the original contention or the original point. You can also do, so the TEEL is topic sentence, explain your topic sentence, then give your evidence or your examples, and then do your link back. I find for GAMSAT section 2, you have so little time that you really want to get into that analysis that the first two options have. And so maybe the last TEEL isn't so much relevant, but you can really pick and choose what you want. Or the one that I would tend to do would be to weave the contention through the writing and let it flow like that, and kind of trickle in the examples, slot in the contention, and it was all a bit mixed. So you don't have to go for something too formal, and you can sort of weave your contention through like that. Start strong with your paragraphs, and I would finish them with room to grow. So you want to make sure that'll help with making sure that your overall essay has a really like cohesive line of thought, is to start relating to your contention and then finish with an opportunity to go on from that and build on what you've just said. So in your paragraphs, quite often when I was writing section 2, I'd only have one example for a paragraph. And that can be different from, say, you've done writing in high school or something, and they tell you that you've got to have your topic sentence, you've got to have 3 examples, and then you've got to link back. But sometimes for this type of writing, less is more. But also, you can do it the other way. It's really either or, but the main thing is to make sure that they're relevant. So don't go into a topic and go, oh, and this and is relevant. Apples, oranges, and lemons, but maybe not lemons because oranges and lemons are kind of related, but apples, oranges, avocados, and they're all completely different in the one paragraph. Sometimes you want to pick your oranges and your lemons, keep your citruses together, and then wait for the other paragraphs to do something else. And then beware the rambling paragraphs. So sometimes you can keep paragraphs even to 2 sentences if it makes an impact that way. The danger in making them too long is what I found was, your first paragraph ends up really, really long, and you've run out of time to make your other points and really link that back to your contention. So start off small, and then you can see how you build up from there. Okay, so lastly, we'll be putting it all together into your big essay structure. There's a couple of ways that you can go with this, and I've broken it into what you'd classically hear of what is essay types and then what is essay structures. So with your types, you have your argumentative, which usually has a very, very strong contention, and then you just back it up with sub-contentions and evidence. Expository, think that you're exposing the topic. So you're more explanatory, and I would describe it as less set in its ways and a bit more questioning. A narrative type of essay, you're sharing with the marker your inquisition, you're sharing your learning, and you're sharing a journey. So I would say that's more of a arrive at a destination kind of essay. And then you can also swing it around completely from those 3 more formal things and go something creative, write a poem, write a song. And that has been done really, really well in the past. and you can still get a good section 2 mark with something creative. The main thing is that you need to make sure that it's saying the points that you want it to say, linking back to that topic, making sure you're still creating a contention, even though you're doing something a little more subjective. Then you've got your structures. So hourglass, starting big, making a big contention, coming into narrow points or your evidence and pinpointing those, and then broadening out at the end for your conclusion or your last paragraph and your conclusion. Then you've got sort of your building essay structure where you start and you kind of just add on to your points as you go. And you end up then having to loop back really, really quickly at the end and just tie it all together. So it just builds and builds and builds on each other as you go through the essay. You got your inverted pyramid essay structure, which is where you start big and you narrow down your examples until you arrive at a very, very, almost your contention at its point at the very end of your essay. And then a lot of people like this one for GAMSAT, but it's honestly up to you. There's no hard set way, but it can work well if you wanted to include something personal, which is to go personal, local, national, global. And that way you're not writing a personal story as your whole essay, and you remember to link that back to the contention and the global picture of that. And you can also do that in the reverse order. So it's completely up to you. And I know that choice can be a little daunting and overwhelming. I've just given a few examples here. So are there any questions or clarifications on what I've talked about so far before we dive in? Okay. So I think that means that now we are, I wanted to finish with some final points. So we're going to start writing a little bit in a minute. When you start writing, you've got a whole heap of information tonight to work with. If you do nothing else, just address that prompt. Go back to your contentions that they were really, really good from the breakout room that I heard, and focus on that, focus on developing that and writing that out. I'm not a big one with fancy words. I don't get it. And so sometimes simplest is best. So you don't need to have a really, really strong vocabulary to do well in section 2. So you don't need to worry about getting too fancy with the words. Often 2 adjectives per sentence max is the way to go in terms of really getting to that point. And if you're struggling, take it one step at a time. Write one sentence and look at it and go, why did I think that? Or what do I think about that sentence that I've just written? What do I think about it? Oh, I think this. Write that down as your next sentence and see where you end up. So I think that means that now we are going to hand it over to you guys in breakout rooms. So that, Sarah, I might need your...
Amazing. Yes, I can reopen those for everyone.
Yeah, perfect.
Amazing. So Grace has just given you quite a few options for structure. It's okay if you feel bamboozled. That's part of the point, is that you know that there's so many options. Would love for you all to grab those contentions you started with, and wherever you're at, I'm going to give you 15 minutes. What time is it? Yep, about 15 minutes to either come up with a plan and just start writing, whether you write an intro, whether you start writing a body paragraph, or maybe you only get up to coming up with a plan and then you're like, that's it for me tonight. Maybe you already came up with a plan and you're ready to write. I want you to use the next 15 minutes to just have a go. And then from there, the tutors in your breakout rooms, share with them what you came up with and they'll help you out and tell you what to do next after tonight, or give you some tips, give you some pointers, whatnot. Please, if you get stuck, don't just sit there for 15 minutes. Grace included this picture and I asked her about it before and she was like, yeah, sometimes because Grace did some Halad classes with us back when she was sitting the GAMSAT, and she said there would be parts when you would have activities. Actually, you might as well share it, Grace.
Oh, that's me. The first time Gabby asked me to do an essay, I think, or anything. I was so scared. But honestly, have a go. We're all friends here. It's actually really nice to share your essay because everyone's super supportive. So yeah, but I sat the GAMSAT 1 year ago tomorrow, and that was me 1 year ago tomorrow. So,
Anniversary. There you go. Amazing. Yes. So even if you feel like the cat, it's fine. Be like Grace. So I'm going to open up the rooms and I'll let you know when 15 minutes is up. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't recording, but hope you don't mind just like that recap on so one of the discussions in Grace and Dawood's room was around having 1 or 2 examples. I think that that's helpful for a lot of people. Do you want to like go over a little bit about what you shared on that?
Yeah, sure. So Drishti, do you mind sharing, or you can say no if you don't want to. I can just explain what I meant.
I mean, everyone's already seen it, so I don't mind sharing it again.
Okay. So it was predominantly a discussion on like the number of arguments to include within the overall essay, and whether to include set examples within the introduction. I'll mention that it's not necessary to include more than one argument or more than one example to build up your case and to build up your essay, because just by having, say, 5 arguments within the one essay doesn't mean that your essay is cohesive and coherent and it's a good essay. It just means that maybe there's a lot of noise if you haven't built it up or developed it well, given the time constraints. And it's likely that within the 30 minutes that you have for one essay, like having 5 arguments is way too much, and you're probably like missing out on a lot of depth. And so choosing one example or choosing one argument that you develop well and you explore amongst all its facets is very, very critical to ensuring that you get an actual good mark within section 2 and within the GAMSAT, because that's all the GAMSAT is essentially. It's to make sure that you get as many points as you can get, and utilizing the tips and tricks that you have up your sleeves. And that's pretty much just what I had to say. Grace, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I thought that in this example, I thought that you built up and connected the prompt really, really well to lead into your first example. So those big picture things were really, really well done in the introduction. And I can see where you would go with that. It's very clear. And I suggested that this has implications on what happens when individuals from various communities attempt to assimilate together. I suggested that could be, as you're going into your examples, that could be the start of your first paragraph. So that was my 2 cents. But I echo everything that Dawood said as well. I think in my section 2 GAMSAT task A, when I actually did it, the last time I did it, I just talked about one thing. And really dove deep and multiple aspects on that one thing. So you can do that. And And I think you were saying that you were struggling with doing the one thing for the whole thing because you ran out of things. So you can also do like one big topic and put a counter argument at the bottom as well. If you are struggling with fleshing out just the one topic for the whole thing, you can just put a caveat or something small. It doesn't, you don't have to dive too deeply into everything. And that could leave the marker questioning as well and think, oh, I really would love to know more about that. I'm going to go home and Google that. You know, that's what's awesome. That's what's going to be interesting to someone.
I think also making sure that you well research, or like having a few like theories or themes or discussions or like prominent sociologists or prominent thinkers, like what they have to say on a given topic, and like having that up your sleeve, just and making sure that you can manipulate it within every single essay that you do would be very helpful in making sure that you have like a well-developed piece that you can be confident in that you're going to be scoring highly within the GAMSAT.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, do you recommend reading up on like theories and things like that in like preparation for it, or even just like reading up, like, I don't know, the news? Is that like something that we should be doing?
So it depends on like what angle you want to take on it, and it very much depends on like the personal style that you want to have. So if you know sociology is
scope,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
No, great idea.
How's everyone going?
Yeah, everyone's got a plan. It's good.
Amazing.
So I guess for this, do we just are we encouraging them to like write these up and then even
did everyone's shared their plan? Yes.
Does anyone want to show off their plan to Sarah?
It's all right, you don't have to show me your plan. But yes, now that you have some plans, would highly recommend having a go writing it and then seeing which parts don't fit or which parts are working well, or if everything's working well, then like you know what to do. It's just about practicing doing the same process over and over. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Like James has probably handled them all fabulously. Cool. I might just go check on the last group then, see where they're at.
Oh, actually, Sarah, Isabel, do you want to ask your question that you just asked me before, actually? Get Sarah's opinion on it as well.
Yeah, of course. My contention was punishment's not the only option, shouldn't be the first option. And the plan of attack was to address how that can reinforce the bad behavior. It can build resentment, us versus them mentality, and then close it off with that there are better ways to handle behavioral control. And my idea was to set the scene of like a teenage son who's supposed to be doing their homework. He's playing computer games. Parents come in. What the heck? Punishment, and sort of set it off as this story, but tie in the ideas with the big world issues and just to reinforce the argument that punishment isn't the only option we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love it. Because I think when I read something that like starts out with this like more interesting approach, or someone sort of brought in a narrative or something, it makes it engaging and the reader, like, we enjoy that. I think it's about exactly like you mentioned, like making sure that you still tie in like the bigger world things and like the deeper ideas that you have, so that it doesn't stay at this surface level story, and making sure that your points and like the whole premise of your contention is still more important in your overall piece than the story itself that you're telling. I think as well, if you're writing the story like at the start, let's say you put it in the intro and then you start going into your points, don't then just like leave the story for dead and just like drop it entirely. So let's say that you intro it about the son and like sort of how the punishment wasn't working, etc., and then you go through your piece. then like bring it back in at the end and sort of like re-refer to it or re-refer to it throughout. So if you're going to use a narrative, whether it's like fictional or whether it's anecdotal or whatever, you can bring it in wherever you like or use it in whatever way you like, but it's most effective when it's engaging. So I find it helpful when it's sort of introduced at the start and when it's not just like there and then dropped. So if you continue to like refer to it, or if you refer to it at the end, that's probably the best way to do it. But absolutely you can do that, and I find that way more engaging than just like reading an essay from the start. It's a really great way to start off.
Brilliant. Thank you for your feedback for that.
All good. Definitely would recommend giving it a go, writing it up maybe tomorrow. Cool. All right. I'll see you guys in a few minutes.
Yeah, see you soon.
To I don't know, pick up my phone, then we'll go and do it. And that internal perception is in turn shaped by our external influences, and that's sort of the body of my paragraph. So influence number one would be obviously our family. So where our family comes from, like my family are migrants, so we have certain beliefs that are going to be different to a belief system of someone who was born in Australia. Like our cultural background, which sort of ties in with the family history. And I want to talk about education, because that's obviously quite a big part of how students are influenced throughout school, because they get a lot of mentoring from their teachers and whatnot. And
You're muted, Sarah.
I'm muted. Hello. Amazing. Thank you. And thanks everyone for sharing your ideas, and hopefully your questions were answered as you went, but we'll have an opportunity to ask any questions in a minute as well. So DeWood was just saying as well, really great idea to practice and get practicing now for section 2. Highly recommend finding a way that works for you to practice. Maybe tonight was a good option for you in terms of discussing ideas and working on a prompt together. I find a lot of people find that helpful, is like sit down with a few friends or other people sitting the GAMSAT and work on the same prompt together and have a go writing. Completely up to you. Something else I would recommend would be have a go with the prompt that you just worked on, actually having a go writing it up. It probably won't feel perfect. It won't be perfect. That's not the point of it. Just give it a go and see where you end up. So what I'd love you all to do is just spend a couple of minutes reflecting on what we've done for the past hour and a half together, and particularly just how do you think you went? How confident do you feel or not feel about writing an essay from what you came up with? What did you learn tonight? What did you learn about sort of where you're at with section 2, such as where are you at? What are you good at? What do you feel like you want to work on next? And from that, I would love for you all to set a goal for yourself. It can be something practical, like I want to write, I want to do this exercise and write 2 essays a week from now until the GAMSAT, or maybe it's something a little bit more like I want to work on building my contentions. So if you all take a moment to do that, and when you're ready, if you could all put in the chat what your goal is, that would be fabulous. And then when everyone's done with that, any opportunity you'd like to take to ask some questions, go for it. So if you have questions, you can put them in the chat or you can just shout out. No worries. Thanks so much for coming along, DeWood. Yep. So we have a question. How long did you guys spend preparing for the GAMSAT? So maybe we'll go around if everyone wants to sort of give a brief rundown on the GAMSAT for them.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. So I took the GAMSAT twice. The first time I did no preparation because I wanted to see where I stood. And The second time, I think I would have spent, it kind of is different for like that passive preparation, and then that really active preparation. So I think the really active preparation I probably spent about 8 weeks on, but passive was more like 12. So I wasn't the type of, I'm a bit like, that was way ahead from what I thought I was going to do. I'm normally a last minute person, so everyone's different. Some people spend 12 months, some people not so much, and it's honestly just about how you use your time and what's best for you. What I did to prepare, I did Halad to prepare. That's what I did. I did the Halad intensives and based all of my other study and other things on what I learned in our classes. So I did practice for essays, I'd get friends to read them and that kind of thing, and I would do the prompt generators online and just try and get something down. Idea generation, just talking about, like, maybe you'll get a prompt and you'll kind of find a way to bring it up in conversation at the dinner table. That's what I used to do, and then see if my ideas hit, especially on those controversial topics I didn't know were going to be too curly to write in the exam. So that's my GAMSAT story.
Sebastian or Rachel, do you want to share yours?
Yeah, so I guess I'll go next. I sat GAMSAT once. I sat it in September of 2019. So the way I did mine was I finished my autumn semester of uni, and then I got 4 weeks off in the middle. And for those 4 weeks, just about every night or so, I was doing a practice essay or just some practice questions for the other 2 sections. So like essay and then practice questions, just for those sort of 4 weeks, trying to get through and just get practice with the questions and start to see what they were going to kind of be like, and again, practice writing essays for all sorts of weird things, getting people to read them and check over them. And then my break finished. I went back to uni and I didn't do much on it basically for the 6 weeks of uni while I was like trying my best to study. And then I think the week before, I had a couple practice tests that I was able to do. So I did those and then went in and sat it and just tried my best. And yeah, that was how I approached it. And my biggest tip is you can practice. You can practice for GAMSAT. It's not like UCAT or the old UMAT where I felt like it was very much like you just had to walk in there and whatever. You can practice for GAMSAT and you can sit it a couple times. So thinking about it more constructively, like it's all about doing my best and I'll see where I went wrong and then I'll improve for next time and then keep going. Yeah, which I prefer. I like being prepared and being able to prepare for things.
Yes, thank you. Does anyone have any other questions? Feel free to ask them. Just in case anyone else. I like having sort of 2 people's stories, Grace and Rachel, because they're like in their own ways very different. Like Rachel sat it once, Grace sat it twice. Different, like Grace used a course, Rachel didn't. Lots of different things that you can do to approach the GAMSAT. I think it's more along the lines of less is more and finding what's good for you and what works for you. And it's fine to start early. It's fine to start a little later. It's more about don't just do things for the sake of it and don't ignore the things that you know will actually help you prepare. So as long as you're reflecting as you go and going, what am I good at? What am I bad at? And focusing on that, that's the best thing that you can do. And if you feel like you can do that on your own or with free resources or whatever, then don't let anyone tell you that that's a bad idea. And likewise, if you feel like you need a course and you need that sort of support and that to sort of like walk you through the things you need to be doing, then that's also a fantastic way to prepare. So you'll hear so many people's stories of lots of different ways to approach it, different time sort of windows that you need to prepare, and don't let anyone tell you that you're wrong picking what works for you. All right. Feel free to keep asking questions. I would love for everyone to just put in the chat one thing that you learned tonight from doing this workshop with us. And while you do that, yeah, feel free to put any questions. And while you do that, everyone who was here helping out tonight, any of the tutors, could you just put your emails in the chat? And so then if anyone has any questions, or if a particular tutor resonated with you and you wanted to ask them a question, you can email them after. Yeah, I love that. Someone said, I learned the importance of having a contention and backing that up. Yep, if all you got was, I need to work out the theme of the prompt and I need to say this is my contention. Perfect. Section 2 maybe isn't as scary as it looks. Absolutely, I agree with you. It can actually be really fun. I gained a better understanding of my strengths and weaknesses. Fabulous, yeah. And that's it, like play to your strengths and build on your weaknesses. And that's the way to tackle the GAMSAT and tackle anything really. Incredible. So hopefully, yes. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming along. I hope that you benefited from having the more interactive one-on-one opportunity to discuss your ideas. And I really love this, and I wanted to finish on this. Someone who's written, learned that you can talk about one topic instead of a few. And how Grace mentioned, I loved just like talking, seeing if I could have a dinner table discussion on talking about a topic. Even if all you do to prepare for section 2 right now or over the next month or so, considering that GAMSAT isn't until September, is just have some discussions about a few topics, then you're already actually preparing. You're already thinking and forming opinions and considering different ideas. So feel free to just like spike up some conversations with some people and see what they think about different topics and practice forming your opinions and expressing your opinions. So if you want a little bit more GAMSAT resources, after today, I will send out the recording to this workshop and you will get sent it as well. And alongside that, I'll send out some resources that you can work through if you'd like to. We do have a free ebook that you can work through at your own pace. And we also have a bunch of free sort of masterclasses and mini mock exams and things like that on our YouTube channel as well. So if you haven't seen them before, feel free to check them out and work through them in your own time. And you can always email me with any questions that come up along the way. And with that as well, you can jump on our Facebook page and we'll keep you up to date with any upcoming events that we'll have happening. And if you would like us to have a look at your section 2 essays, you can come to this link here and we'll mark them for you. All of the markers here tonight, or all of the tutors here tonight, are happy to mark them. And so you can submit them there. You can even write one or finish one off that you started writing tonight, and we can give you a mark and let you know how you're going and give you personalized feedback on that. And also we do have one of our courses coming up fairly soon. It will be starting, I believe it's in 3 weeks time, but I'm kind of in the middle of lockdown right now and lost with all my dates, but I've just put the link in the description if you'd like to check it out. We do have 2 different courses. Our Head Start course is great for if it's your first time sitting and you want a bit of a step up into GAMSAT courses. If you feel like you've sat the GAMSAT before, or you already know a lot of the sort of pre-existing content or the content that you need to know, then feel free to look at our intensives courses, which you'll also be able to find through our website, or through that link you can get redirected to our intensive courses. But I wanted to show you our Head Start courses tonight because they are coming up very soon. You can pick your tutor, pick your time slot that you'd like. And also we have discounts available. If you bring a friend along, you can get a 10% discount. But also if you email me, if you'd like to sign up for a full Head Start course, I can give you a discount code for coming along to tonight's event as well. But most of all, I want you to get the most out of GAMSAT prep as you possibly can. So feel free to email us any questions, or if you're finding it hard to find any of our resources online, just let me know. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming along tonight. I will send out a feedback form as well, so you can let us know what you found helpful and what you'd like to see from us in the future. Otherwise, feel free to stick around if you have any final questions, but have a good, safe evening. Those in Melbourne, hopefully you're safe and well during the lockdown. And thank you so much, everyone who joined me tonight to help run the event. Super appreciate it. And yeah, have a great night.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great night, everyone.
I'm glad you're feeling better. So good.